You're recording.
This is the Greenfield Public Schools School Committee meeting for Monday, September 13th, 2021 at 6 p.m. We are at the Greenfield High School Library, and we are following the school protocols for mask wearing and attempts at maintaining social distancing. This meeting is being recorded by GCTV and could be attended live by the public if they so choose. So let's do a roll call and call to order. Secretary Johnson-Musad.
Member Karen. Vice Chair Ekstrom.
Present.
Member Hollins.
Here.
Secretary Johnson-Musad, I'm here. Chair Proietti.
Here.
Member Wall.
Here.
Mayor Wiedegardner. We have a quorum.
We also have a member
We have
Karen.
Member Karen.
Sorry.
Your timing is impeccable.
I tried.
So I call to order at 6:02 p.m. The first item of business is approving two sets of minutes, one from the meeting on August 11th and one from the meeting on August 18th. I'd like to approve them as a consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the two sets of minutes, please?
So moved.
Member Johnson-Musad, and a second.
Second.
And a second from Member Wall. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll do, I'm sorry. Member Hollins, go ahead.
On the minutes of August 18th, under family handbooks, bullets 2 and 3, concern that including policies might be overwhelming and off-putting. That was specific for elementary parents. And the suggestion, the next bullet, the next sentence, the suggestion to create friendly, welcoming handbooks, that was also specific to elementary parents. It
So you'd
wasn't,
like the minutes to reflect that for both of those bullet items?
yes, to put in for elementary parents.
I think that makes sense. Susan Farber, does that make sense to you? Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's just do a vote. We'll do any abstentions from approving the minutes, any no votes. Okay, so those pass unanimously. And I guess we are at, public comment. Is there? You're not public comment, I'm doing. You're not public comment. Everyone's got their mask on, I can't tell who anyone is. Anyone for public comment? I'm not seeing anyone, so we will move on. And we are so lucky to have with us in person tonight Shane Toomey to do the report from the student representatives to the school committee.
Hi.
Where's your partner in crime?
Unfortunately, she has a field hockey event today, so she's not going to be able to make it.
Excused.
Yeah.
You can let her know. And tell me her name again.
Brielle Wadello.
Okay. I haven't met that friend yet, but I will meet her soon, I hope. I'm looking forward to it. And Shane, if you want, you can take your mask off while you're speaking, so at least we can hear what you're saying.
So, unfortunately, I was not able to print my notes, so I will be reading from my phone. My apologies on that. But first, we're starting with student council updates. So, the council is off to a great start this year. We've had 2 meetings already and a bonding event. Speeches and voting for class officer positions will be due this Friday on the 17th. We are planning a homecoming this fall, and I'm currently writing a proposal to get that approved by administration. We will be helping with the Green River cleanup on September 25th, and new members are always welcome and appreciated to join Student Council. The Key Club had their first meeting last week with a lot of excitement. They're working on something to help all students at GHS and also planning a charity volleyball tournament in October to benefit UNICEF. Meetings are Thursday after school in the gymnasium. Library Club will have its first meeting on Tuesday, September 21st at 2:15 p.m. In the library. We will get to know each other, discuss plans for the next year ahead, and make buttons. Later in the year, we will have 2 author visits to GHS. Jarrett Krasokska, I'm sure I butchered that name, author of the graphic memoir, Hey Kiddo, How I Lost My Mother, Found My Father, and Dealt with Family Addiction. And Tiffany Jewell, author of the book, author of this book is Anti-Racist. We're also hoping to hold our second Comic-Con in December, the annual Poetry Slam in April, and 2 book-to-movie events this year. All students are invited to join the Library Club or come to any of the following events. French Club will have its first meeting on Monday, September 20th at 2:15 p.m. in Madam Hartman's classroom, and on the first Monday of each month going forward. We're looking forward to Coffee House, Taste of World Cultures, and other events such as French film night, French cooking events, and other school games, holiday celebrations, and much more. All students are always welcome to come to celebrate the French language and culture with us, even if they're not in French class, and new members are always encouraged to come and say bonjour. AV Club has started their weekly meetings and is excited to welcome a few new members. We've been happy to reconnect and share that we've been up to with what we've been up to in AV Club. Is looking forward to hopefully participating in GCTV's Lights Camera Greenfield again this year, following up on last year's award-winning Pumpkinhead. AV Club meets on Thursdays after school in the film lab, and new members are again always welcome. Class meetings were held last week for each grade on Tuesday, September 7th and Wednesday, September 8th to discuss health and safety protocols as well as rules and upcoming possible events. Nurse Savitri spoke to each grade about pool testing, proper sanitization, and tips and tricks to be with your masks to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Each grade also discussed the rules and norms that are expected of them in the unique school year ahead of them, as well as the possibility of the homecoming dance, which is not yet concrete, as details are still being worked out with administration. Thank you.
That's great.
Thank
you.
Go ahead,
There's a question for you. So, student council, is that inclusive of 8th grade?
Yeah, so it's all grades in the high school.
Okay. And the book, Hey Kiddo, that the author's coming, that's the book that everyone in the high school read last year, right?
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Then, in the event people don't know, there's a book that everyone in the high school reads every year, and Hey Kiddo was the one they did last year.
And is Tiffany with Jewel the one for the book this year? This book is anti-racist. We're not quizzing you, Shane.
I know,
You
yeah.
what-
Yeah, that is
Okay.
Tiffany Jewell, yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Awesome, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Toomey, the other Mr. Toomey?
That's a
All
great
right.
report. Thank you.
Yes,
for your
thank you, Shane. We all
Thank
appreciate
you.
you being
Thank you
here.
very much.
Can't wait to meet your counterpart next time. Tell her we're friendly.
I see your dad in the audience. Tell him I said hi.
All right, so we are moving right along. We're on agenda item 5, the reports of the administration. And we do not have a report from the school business manager tonight. He's not able to be here because the meeting was rescheduled. And we have heard from him quite a bit lately, so we're just going to pass on that and have a report from Andy in October. And so we're on to the person I have affectionately christened ASKP, Assistant Superintendent Karen Patnode, and her report to the school committee. Because it's a mouthful. It's a mouthful. I can't even say it. Yeah, ASKP.
Well, thank you. I like the acronym. In education, we need one more. Update with coaches and interventionists. We've had 2 meetings so far this year, and they've jumped right in head first into their roles. They've started doing some universal screenings with students. They started with the kindergartners in math and ELA, and they're working their way through grades 1 through 4. We also have our coach the math coach at the middle school doing screenings for grades 5 through 7, and we're in the midst of hiring the ELA coach for the middle school to jump on board and assist there as well. We've started reviewing the curriculum in math for grades K through 4, which is the Great Minds Eureka curriculum, and really aligning it with fidelity across the elementary schools. Talking about modules and deadlines for doing assessments and reviewing that data, and then really reviewing the data to implement interventions for students and fill skill gaps. The middle school's piloting Into Math and Learn Zillion for 2 of their math resources this year, and they are also being monitored for units and going through formative and summative assessments to work with the staff to really align the curriculum and see how well each pilot program fits into what we're hoping to succeed in. We're also looking at reviewing the ELA curriculum K through 7 this year and doing a lot of horizontal work and vertical alignment during our faculty meetings, which are going to be all held on Wednesdays starting late October to allow us to do some of that great work. Our 18 current mentors joined me for a meeting before school started and then spent new teacher orientation with our 27 new hires, so it was really exciting. We had a lot of our mentors who were able to come, help them in their PD days and really sit with them and assist them and make them feel at home in Greenfield Public Schools. They also got to have breakfast and lunch, and I really want to thank the food service department for putting on a great spread for us over those new teacher orientation days. We also had a highlight of this year, which was a tour of Greenfield, and I want to thank Hibiscus Bus Company. It was about 95 that day and 100% humidity, so they sent us a luxury bus with air conditioning.
that's nice.
Knowing our new teachers would definitely
That's
want to be
great.
cool on the tour around town. So that was a really nice addition to this welcome this year. And we also have 4 teachers in district currently that are going to start in late September with a collaborative in Northampton for mentor teacher training, because they also want to become mentors in district starting next year. And lastly, I've been working on federal grants and creating a long-term plan with Christine for investing our funds to support student growth and achievement, and we're trying to solidify the final submissions for ESER 3 and working hard on the land. So that's it. Thank you.
That's it. That's all. Awesome.
Thank you for that. Are there questions or comments for ASKP? Yes, Member Holland, go
I
ahead.
have a question and a comment. I don't remember when it was, but we were told there was a turnaround plan being developed for the middle school. And we had a presentation, and then I don't think we've heard about it since. I don't know if, it would sometime be nice to hear an update on that. And the other thing was, I really appreciate everything you're doing. I hope sometime when there's time and curriculum, we can actually look at the music curriculum and what we do at the lower levels. It's the only curriculum where really there's some performance thing at the end. Maybe sports goes in there, but that would be good sometime to just know what that is. Thank you.
Sure, and I'll just address the turnaround plans. Federal Street School and the middle school both have turnaround plans. And their improvement plans are due. We're meeting with the state on Thursday to actually review. Principal Fenimore finished hers before she left on maternity leave, but we'll be working with the state to go over that, and we have to submit it along with the turnaround grant, which is due October 15th. And the middle school has their turnaround plan finalized as well, and it'll be submitted once the grant is submitted. And I think once those are submitted with DESI, then Christine and I can share them with the committee, and so you'll have the final plans.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other? Secretary Johnson, go ahead.
Just to follow up to that, I think that one of the components of the turnaround plans has to do with student assessment, and like that's part of how they kind of measure your progress. But how was student assessment affected by COVID, and how does that affect the turnaround process? If you know, I don't know.
Well, it's certainly been affected. I think that really is how part of this new math curriculum came to be at the middle school, which is what they worked on last year with DESI, reviewing high quality materials and coming to some conclusions on which programs they wanted to pilot based on past data. What they're trying to implement this year is to have more than one data source. We rely heavily often on MCAS or math, and we're really trying to use the new resources in these curriculum documents to have more than one data source. That's probably not so reliable considering we were remote kids. Some of those kids took MCAS remote and didn't have to come in, and you know how valid is even math testing from last year. So part of the plan is to really use these coaches and interventionists to do a lot of screening, to analyze formative and summative assessments in real time so that we can implement interventions and really fill those skill gaps without waiting for a plan that says, 6 months from now, what do you say about our data? Rather, we have these people, boots on the ground, looking at data every day in teachers' classrooms, working in collaboration with them to really try to help kids.
Thank you.
Anything else from the school committee? Awesome, thank you. Appreciate your work,
Thanks.
as always. How about, so we have a brand new superintendent, these folks haven't noticed. How about a report from our new superintendent? First of all, welcome to your official, first school committee meeting in charge.
Thanks. I'm very excited to be here. I finished 3 weeks and 1 day.
And I stopped checking in
And you
every
stayed,
day to
that's
make sure
pretty
you're
good.
coming back.
Yep.
So,
Figured that I would make reference if there was a problem. No, I am going to keep coming back. The first 3 weeks has been, it has been very busy, but I think the positive of that is that in trying to respond to questions and situations that have come up, I have had the opportunity to get to know a lot about the people that are working here and have had to figure out a lot of resources very quickly so that I could respond to the situations. So it's actually been to my benefit in a very backwards way that things have, starting right before school is not always optimal, but I got to get right into it and am learning quite a bit about a lot of things happening here. So that's been very good. A lot of what I've been doing for the past 3 weeks is responding to some urgent issues and some things that fall under the realm of confidential. So I'm not able to highlight those in a report, but please
I
know
think we
that
call that baptism by fire, isn't that?
I'm well presented. But I have been working on those issues, and then a few other things that I'll highlight for you. One of the things I want to just piggyback on some of what Karen talked about is, when you look at the data sets we've been using and what we continue to use, we'll be working as the year goes on to look to determine if the data sets answer the questions we have about our student performance and see if we need to make adjustments to those data sets. So we're using math right now, that's what we have, and we'll continue to evaluate whether that gives us the data that we need or if we need to add or modify what we have. So it's a constant evaluation of our evaluation, so to speak. So before school care, that was a situation that was one of the urgencies when I started, was ensuring that we got staff quickly, and thankfully we've had staff in the schools that have applied for the before school care, and we are able to do that. We started the Tuesday after Labor Day. We had just over 130 students signed up, and in the process of getting counts of how many are actually attending, but we did have over 130 that have signed up. We are looking at a way to put that link on the website to allow families to continue to access, balancing our request that people let us know ahead of time so that we can ensure that we know they're coming. There's levels of accountability connected to having the students before school. So we want them to let us know ahead of time and not just take it day by day and drop students out. So elementary unified arts, I know there was, we've addressed an equity issue by rescheduling art, music, physical education, technology, and library. And library, okay. I ran out of fingers, so I knew I was done. And the result of that, as you probably know, is that the instrumental music had to be reformatted. So we have a plan for that. I'm waiting to hear back from our current and soon to be onboarded music staff. And based on their availability and preference, we will either be offering music after school, or I will be posting for a full-time instrumental teacher to allow any interested fourth grader at all 3 schools to have instrumental lessons and then participate in bands. So I feel like as soon as I hear back from the staff on what will work for them to be able to offer the service, we'll move forward, and that should be taken care of in a fairly reasonable time frame. The one thing I do want to share, so the committee is clear, is that if instrumental lessons happen during the school day, students will miss core instruction for those 2 of them. Staffing, we are very happy, as Karen.
Wait, can I ask one question about that? They only miss a specific amount of time. So it isn't that they miss an entire class, it would be, say, and I don't know.
It would depend on the schedule.
Okay, so it would be like 15 minutes, an hour, and you may not have the answer right now, and that's fine.
30 minutes of instruction. So the day-long schedule would be a rotation through each of the elementary
Yep.
schools. And then on Friday, it would be a rotation through for the whole band at each school.
Okay,
So there would be, at least half an hour for the instrument, and I would anticipate a little bit longer for the band.
yeah, okay.
So, okay.
I have a question.
Yes, that's it, sorry.
Would that be just once? Typically, when they had done it, it was just once a week. They meant with band, so it'd still be once a week,
Once for a lesson, and then once
Once-
for the band.
okay.
So twice.
twice a week.
total. Yep. That's if it's during the school day.
Mhm.
So the staffing, Eric Hebe joined us as facilities director. Eric started the day after Labor Day and also hit the ground running. He's been out and working with all of our custodians and meeting with building principals. He will also be working with me on the first leg of the capital requests. So that will be moving forward in the process. Christopher Pratt will be joining us as the associate principal for the middle school. He's coming on September 27th, and we are very excited. Chris is actually coming from a superintendency, so we're very excited that he'll be bringing a breadth of experience to his role at the middle school. And then some of you may know, but Casey has resigned from principal of Discovery School. Position is posted. She has graciously agreed to postpone her departure a little bit until we can arrange for someone to step into the role. So I'll update the committee as we go in terms of applicants and potential next steps. But we still have vacancies, a lot of in the support roles, IAs, we still have cafeteria folks. Ed's been furiously hiring crossing guards and bus monitors. But I think Greenfield is not immune to the staffing issues that other districts have encountered. So as I reported in the parent update Thursday, we've started to see some positive COVID cases. It will continue, it already is continuing. I will give an updated count on Thursday. But we're responding to that. We have protocols in place that Kelly oversees for us to ensure that we're doing diligence in terms of contact tracing, working with the Department of Public Health, and personally notifying everyone who's impacted or a close contact. So, anyone who is closely affected by a positive case of COVID will hear from staff, either ours or the Department of Public Health. They will not be notified by getting information through my parent update. So I know there have been a couple of questions in terms of our protocols. One thing that's happening is that the administrative team will be reviewing our COVID protocols on an ongoing basis, which is actually scheduled for tomorrow. And Kelly and I have been in pretty frequent contact, which will continue and increase, no doubt. So we are working on that. Our use of COVID protocols is not static. We're going to change as situations change. And truthfully, as the year evolves and we see how our students are functioning, what kinds of challenges we have in classrooms, and then what the case numbers are in the community, we will be making adjustments. And anytime there are protocol updates, I will communicate those in the parent update on Thursdays. And you folks are all getting that, right? Okay. One thing that was my oversight, or that I did not communicate well, is our delay in having services from the Department of Education around the pool testing. It's not in place yet. That is a statewide issue. I was at a superintendent's meeting Friday, and Commissioner Riley has been working with the vendor for pool testing, and they are struggling with staffing. So Kelly and I have had a conversation. We are going to look to try to do the pool testing with internal staff. So I will update you folks as soon as we're able. We still have some staff in the pipeline being processed, but we're really looking to get that moving as quickly as possible. But certainly if any parents or community members have questions about the testing process, they can reach out to the school nurses or to Kelly directly. survey. And I'm scheduling, I'll be honest, Lauren is scheduling meetings with,
We know who's in charge of it.
yes, it's clear that it is always in terms of any calendar, anything. She has started reaching out to schedule meetings with me, with other city department heads so that I can introduce myself, talk with them about their thoughts and desires, and at least put faces to names and such. So those things will be happening, and I will also have a schedule where I'm in buildings on a regular basis. I haven't started that. I wouldn't have started that yet, even if I've been here for 10 years. I don't think any students, teachers, or principals need me in their space in the first 2 weeks of school. They need to get themselves going and situated in the first couple of weeks of school, not entertain me while I'm in the building. So that's basically what's been happening.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the school committee? The superintendent, secretary, Johnson.
I have one, it goes back to early in your presentation,
Awesome.
and maybe, Ms. Pat nods as well. MAP is one of our assessments. What does it stand for, and what is it? Maybe you don't know what it stands for.
Oh, I know what it is.
MAP's the one they take every year, right?
It's like 3 times a year. Spring, winter. It's like fall, winter, spring.
Yes.
It's like
Wow.
they expect the numbers to change over time.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's the one, it's the one they take most frequently.
yeah.
Wow.
It's
It's from a vendor, it's a overall achievement, math, reading, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You know what,
Spitball.
just, for the sake of putting a period after that, I will look it up and I will email the committee, because now I need to.
There you
Now it's necessary.
I know what it's like to get so used to acronyms that you don't know what
Yeah.
they stand for
Well,
anymore.
thank you for calling us on that, we're gonna look that up and send it out to the committee.
Thank you. That's all.
Other questions or comments, member Karen?
I've been hearing a lot of parents ask about lunchrooms and COVID protocols, and I know at some schools, especially at the elementary level, I think that's where most people are concerned since those children cannot be vaccinated at this time. I know at some of them they're eating at desks. Is that actually occurring across the district? Do you know?
In the cafeterias. What we had talked about before school started was doing what we could to maintain at least 3 feet of space for students all facing the same direction when they were eating.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the principals felt that it was more easily achieved if they used desks instead of tables. to
Okay,
do
so
that.
they're still maintaining a 3 foot of distance, all facing the same direction. I think parents are just thinking they're all sitting at tables staring at each other all lunch period. I don't think that's occurring,
I
but
am not aware that that is.
I think it's just one of those fears parents and people have. So,
Absolutely, and I understand that, especially for students who can't be vaccinated. It's very challenging.
yeah.
Those are, but I will communicate. It's good to know that these questions are coming.
Yeah.
When I do my update, I can reiterate what.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make sure before I started telling people that I had it straight too. Like, no, I'm pretty sure they're sitting 3 feet apart. And
The last discussion that was had was that we were all working to have 3 feet of space with people facing the same direction as feasible. I know at the high school, I know Mr. Cavallo is staring at the back of my head. We had some round tables that we were working with,
Mhm.
but those were much wider across.
yeah, those are
than
bigger
3
tables.
feet.
Yeah.
But that's,
Okay,
that was
thank you.
cool. You're welcome.
Other questions or comments? So I just have a clarification, because we've seen a few communications from families, from parents that are concerned about the pool testing. And some of this maybe house mask breaks are happening. So pool testing has been available to us, but something is happening with, for lack of a better term, the supply chain for pool testing. Like there's a issue with staffing.
That's their vendor, Bessie, had offered to districts that no charge does not have the staff that we need to have started the pool testing in districts to this point.
And we weren't really told about that until it was too late to do anything else. We assumed it would probably be here.
Well, we were definitely assuming it was few of us.
Yeah, I can.
And I'm not blaming you, I wanna
Yeah.
make sure that when people hear, watch this, that they
Yeah.
understand what's happening.
Absolutely, I can elaborate a little bit. So when Desi announced just a couple weeks before school was starting, they said, here's all the support that we're offering you. We're offering you a program coordinator, we're offering you an on-site team. You know, I was part of a call where I said, you're really gonna give us enough people to be able to test the entire high school in an hour and a half? And they said, yes, we will give you as many people as it takes to test your entire school in the first period of the day. And they still have not been able to give me a date of when this on-site team is going to be available. So as a sort of plan B, we've been working on, can we pull together enough staffing to do it without their on-site support team? And Christine and I have been in communication about what that team can look like. And so, you know, if it was up to me, I would have started it last week
Sure.
before the fair happened.
Sure.
So I'm hoping, you know, that we can get it going as soon as possible.
Great.
because
Well, I
it's-
appreciate you taking that.
It is definitely my highest priority.
Yeah, and of course, I think a lot of our families send their kids back to school resting a little easier knowing that the pool testing is happening. This is probably the school committee that would be least surprised that the state has not met their obligation. So I just want to
shocking.
make sure people
So weird.
understand that it's not we're falling down on the job, it's that we were given different information than the reality
And
of
also-
the situation.
I think it's worth clarifying too, when we talk about COVID testing, we're talking about 3 kinds of testing. So one is the pool testing, which is weekly PCR. Another is the rapid testing for symptomatic students, so we can do a rapid antigen test. And then the final one is what we're calling test and stay, which is when someone gets identified as a close contact, we can test them, and as long as they don't have any symptoms, they can continue to come to school, and they can get tested every morning. As long as they're negative, they can continue coming. So we have already been doing test and stay, and we're already doing symptomatic testing. I've already been doing every single day, we've been doing rapid tests. So we have received the rapid test supplies, and we are already putting that in place. I've already been,
So 2/3 of the testing is happening
yes.
as scheduled. It's
Exactly.
really just the pool testing.
Exactly. It's-
I
we-
appreciate
We already
understanding.
have rapid tests going, I've already
Yeah.
done quite a few of them, it's part of the daily routine now. Whenever someone comes
Sure.
in with any kind of symptoms, my first thought is, can we do a rapid? And
Right.
if they're not signed up, then I call the parent and I
Yeah.
say, can we sign them up right now?
Yeah.
And so we've been doing that, that's been a big part of our daily workload. is just
Sure, I
getting
got it,
kids
yeah.
signed up and getting those rapid tests going.
Yeah.
So I think it's good for parents to understand that it's not that we don't have any testing happening. It's just the
One
the-
piece of it.
yeah, the weekly PCR tests that
Yeah.
we're still trying to figure out. how to
That's
do
great, that's
ourselves.
great to understand. I really did not, I thought I understood what was happening, I actually didn't, so I appreciate that.
And what does the PCR stand for? Sorry.
You and the acronyms tonight, Mr. Glenn. I love it.
Polychain polymerase,
Oh, okay, it's a medical.
Yeah,
term.
and I can explain, PCR tests for the actual genetic material of the virus. They test for the RNA of the virus. Antigen tests for the protein that's found on the outside of the virus. So they're just picking up 2 different kinds of material. The PCR test takes about 24 hours to come back, and it's considered kind of the gold standard of, you know, it's the highest sensitivity and highest accuracy. The antigen test can take 15 minutes, and it is very, very accurate if someone is symptomatic. If they have symptoms, it's about 96% accurate, so it's very, very good. If they are asymptomatic, it's slightly less than that. So the rapid test is really an excellent way if somebody's coming in with symptoms that we can know right away, is it COVID or is it maybe allergies, or, you know, I had one who tested negative for COVID and it turns out it was a strep throat. So that really helps us identify in the moment if we have a positive in front of us. The PCR test is really helpful for those asymptomatic carriers who may have very, very little symptoms, they may not even realize it, and that helps us identify those cases in the community and just pull them out and respond to it as quick as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're becoming public health experts. RNA.
Other questions for the superintendent on any of her report? Phew, got that first report
Amy.
out of the way.
Excuse me, Chair.
What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Susan
A quick
Harper.
search reveals that MAP stands for Measure of Academic Progress.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now I don't have to look it up.
All right, so we are on to the school committee reports. And I just want to report on a couple of things. As Christine and I have started our regular communication system that we're going to use with each other, there's definitely been a couple of things that we have tried to kind of work out in terms of communication with the community, which we know has been something that for us has sometimes been not handled in the best way. And so one of the things that I think works with our policies as a school committee and also helps us to know how responses are happening when we get emails or telephone calls with questions, specifically email more than anything, is that as a part of her responsibilities as superintendent, that Superintendent Report will respond to those emails and copy me rather than copying the whole school committee, because we do run the risk of violating open meeting law if there's discussion. And so I just want to point that out, so now that as we're moving forward in a positive direction and putting some things in place that are going to help us be consistent in our messaging, let's allow one person to speak for us, and then you should know that if you see an email to school committee member that you have questions about, it will be responded to, and you can contact me or Christine to figure out what response was given to the family, to the community member about that. So that was one thing that she and I had talked about that I support and that does fit with our policies as a school committee in terms of communication. And then also, the only other thing I wanted to remember or to report on as chair is we are really, I think, doing a pretty amazing job with staffing, considering the tumultuous effect the pandemic has had on all industries, at all levels of staffing. We as a community watched as the president of GCC stepped down to take a vice president job at another college. We have a former superintendent who's working as an assistant principal at the middle school. Both of these folks have reported in simple words, I just needed a break. A lot of that is happening with everyone. And so we have this situation where not only we're wearing masks and we're keeping social distance and our kids don't quite know what to do and how to socialize with their friends, we also just have all these challenges, whether it's supply chain or staffing, that we need to really be conscious of, that are these ripple effects of a massive global pandemic. So as we like to say, let's be patient, let's keep moving forward, keep our momentum, but recognize that those things are super challenging. And I always appreciate how many comments we get from the community about what's happening in the schools. And we've gotten a number of emails saying, my kid is reporting this. And every single one of them, too, has been really gracious about, this is just what I'm hearing. I just want to know what the real story is. So just trying to be patient with all of that, because it's such a change for all of us. And that's my report.
Question.
Yes, go ahead, Secretary Johnson.
Well, I guess, and maybe this is an agenda item for a future meeting, but I just feel like there maybe needs to be a fuller presentation or discussion about the communication policy you're talking about, because, I mean, for me, it was helpful when Dr. Hu was here and she would copy the school committee on her responses, because I would know what message was going out to people who were writing to us as elected officials, sharing their concerns. And I think the only concern about open meeting law would be if we all started chiming in and kind of debating over email. And I wonder if you put the school committee in the BCC field, we could see what you wrote and we wouldn't be necessarily debating amongst ourselves and violating open meeting law. That could be one response, but I guess I feel like as an elected official, like my email's there for people to, or the school committee email's there for people to share their concerns with us, and oftentimes I write back and just say thank you for sharing your concerns, and it's a way for people to know that I am listening to them. So I just feel like if they write to the school committee and they maybe hear back from the superintendent, but they never hear from us, like thank you for your email and we want to hear from you. I just think it's important to keep those lines of communication open. So that's, I don't know if maybe I
So you
misunderstood.
really want to
something
see the
or-
responses, you just don't want, and I'm seeing nodding heads over your shoulder there. They want to see the responses, but not, we can work with that.
It makes it impossible to know what the message that the schools are sending out if we don't.
Yeah, and we're just, more than anything, we're just trying to simplify
Mhm.
how it all goes forward.
Yep.
And I freely admit 99% of the time, I skim the response from the superintendent. I don't spend a lot of time on it because I'm interested in what people are saying, but I know they've got it handled.
And that's not the question.
Yeah.
The question
You want
is
to see-
we want to know what the message is, so we
Yeah.
reflect that message when we
Yeah.
I had the same thought. Like 3 or 4 people write in, they ask these questions about masking. I don't care who answers, but I'd like to know, well, what, it raises your interest. What are we doing with masking?
Sure.
And I was going to suggest maybe if we don't see it, that at least it could be reported out. We had 2 people write in about this and here's what's going on with that, so we know.
Sounds like a BCC is probably just the easiest thing.
But I agree.
Just remember, no replying back.
Yeah.
But and if you put it in the BCC, even if we hit reply all, it's just good. Like what I do when I want a response to myself, but I don't want it to the full group, I'll put myself in the 2, so like Dr.
Yeah.
Barge could do that, or put
Yeah.
in Chair Poyetti or
Yeah.
something. And then even if we hit reply all, we're only going to get Dr. DeBarge. So,
Thank you for bringing that up. Sure, I appreciate that.
sure.
Any other comments, questions? So subcommittees, do we have a report from budgeting? I can't remember. I think there was a budget
Yeah.
subcommittee since we last.
So it was very, it was light on topics because the things that we had anticipated discussing didn't get to the agenda, so we discussed something else. We were talking about the unified arts that had been pulled from the grade schools or the elementary schools. And just the concern was, is this happening because there was a lack of funding? And the answer was no.
No.
That's not why. So that's basically what we spent most of our time on.
Okay. Were there other subcommittee meetings? I don't think there were. So
We need to have a health safety,
So
but we've been holding off and waiting for Christine to come in,
Yeah.
and now we have a new facilities director because we need to start going back to the lovely conversation of Green River School. And
Yeah.
we put that back, and Jean was working on her end on the construction and planning committee, but we need to be like triangulating that in some way. So that does
Sure.
need to happen, but
And
we
I
were
think
sort of
there's gonna
waiting.
be other subcommittees that also should put together a regular meeting schedule. Can I ask that if you're a chair of the subcommittee, can you decide what day and time of the month that you'll have a regularly scheduled monthly meeting? And then report that to us, and we can negotiate if it's something that the superintendent or assistant ASKP needs to be at. We can negotiate that time, but I think let's start with a monthly meeting for each of the subcommittees and go from there. Get them in a place where the superintendent or a designee can participate.
Yep, you're reading our mind. Dr. DeBarge and I were emailing today about getting policy going. We do have kind of a backlog of things that are piling up, so.
Well, and
we'll
we've
be in
done a
touch
lot of
about
great work in our
scheduling.
subcommittees, and it's just, I think it was important for us to maybe have a little breather while we transitioned and over the summer while people are taking vacations, and we do good work in those subcommittees, so let's get in the habit of, at least during the academic year, having a monthly meeting happening. And if you need assistance setting that up in your chair, you know where to find me.
Point of clarification.
Yeah,
The subcommittee chairs will reach out and tell me what date and time. to
they'll
put
tell
them on
both
the
of us,
schedule.
yeah, so we can make sure that it'll work for you.
I don't need to facilitate.
No, we will take it. We will reach out to you.
My guess is that we will reach out to Lauren and say, hey, can you do a poll about when people can meet to do this?
That's
And then,
fine, I
so
just-
really it's gonna be Lauren who figures.
Want to make sure if I need to make a note or not.
No,
This is our job. We got this part.
I'll gladly.
You got
do
it.
that.
Okay, so we are on to number 7, which is pool testing for athletes. So we talked a little already about the challenges for pool testing. Where does it stand specifically for the athletes? And thank you, Coach, for also being with us tonight. Appreciate it.
So, first off, I just want to say that testing is one of our best mitigation strategies right now. It is something that I believe DESE is relying on heavily, as they have basically rolled back all of the other precautions that they had in place previously.
As they work for Charlie Nation.
And so now they're really putting a whole lot of emphasis and finances and support into testing, get testing going. And what we found is that, we want to do everything that we can to get as much participation across the board, absolutely. So it's not that I just want athletes pool tested, it's that I want everybody pool tested. But athletes in particular, and I'm saying athletes, but I mean all extracurriculars. I'm talking
Okay.
about clubs
Okay.
as well as athletes, particularly at the middle school and at the high school, that there's an increased risk because MIAA doesn't have any more special precautions that they had last year. Last year they had changed lots of rules, made all these modifications to play in order to keep people spaced out more. They've let go of all those modifications. We're
So
playing
there's-
full contact hockey, we're playing full contact football.
There will be
Like,
spectators.
There will be
Back
spectators.
capacity at
Yes,
Just
everything.
mask for indoor.
Yes, mask.
And
for-
so-
No
thank you.
masks up.
Because we cannot maintain 3 feet of
I'll
social
put it in my
distance while doing sports. And we have the increased respiration of kids breathing heavy, it just makes it a larger risk for the athletes. And we know last year that was one of the biggest things that we were dealing with all year long was transmission that was happening in sports. So what many districts have started doing that I would like us to do is to say anyone who wants to participate in an extracurricular activity, including athletics, they have to sign up for pool testing. Pool testing has to be mandatory for them. We can't mandate it for kids for school. We can't, do anything to impede their access to structured learning time. So it would not, be creating any kind of barrier to learning. But we can do it to say if you want to participate in these high-risk activities, you need to participate in testing. So I know that Frontier has already passed the same proposal. Mohawk has already done it. Mohawk actually went a step further and they have mandated it for everyone participating in their before care and their after care for both students and adults. And I know Gil Montague is considering the same proposal tomorrow. And those districts in particular, we are on co-op teams with them. Our football team and our hockey team are co-op with them. So it feels like it would be good for continuity of policy and practice to be passing the same kind of policy as what these other districts have passed. And more than anything, it's helping us with the process of identifying cases as quickly as possible and responding to them as quickly as possible. I can say already, we had one case on an athletic team, and it's like the time that it takes between we learn, well, this athlete may have been exposed, and then we have to wait until they take a test and wait until those test results come back. And now it's Friday, you know, and so
And they told two friends and they told two
right, so it helps us participating in the pool testing, I think helps us really respond much faster to get ahead of the game. And I also think it helps parents to know, you know, if their kid is participating in an activity, they can know everyone on that team is getting tested every week. And that I think does help put people at ease and help them make decisions about, are we gonna have Thanksgiving at grandma's house? Are we gonna go visit, you know, this person who's vulnerable? I think that it helps them, you know, be able to make those decisions knowing, you know, everyone on the team was tested this week and I didn't hear about any positives, so I can feel more at ease that my child is not, you know, an asymptomatic carrier right now.
Yeah. So I think what I'd like to do, learning that, thank you Kelly, that was a really helpful overview, is we'll start with a motion, but I'm wondering if, I had come intending to, and the agenda item is pool testing for athletes, so let's work through the motion, because I kind of want to add the before and after care programs to the motion, but it's not on the agenda. So I think we should.
It doesn't even say extracurriculars, it just says athletes. But we actually, this proposal is for all of it, correct?
Childhood athletes.
The proposal that I wrote is for
For all
First
extracurriculars.
mistake I ever made.
I mean, I'm so glad I could catch it for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's on here
Yeah.
many times.
Yeah.
Just
So-
COVID stuff is on here. I think you're
Yeah,
covered.
so, okay, so first off, considering the athlete topic, Mike, do you wanna add anything?
No, she said it's great, it's awesome.
Yeah.
No.
So, and then one more thing, so those like COVID, like, managers, like parent volunteers that you had last year, none of that is in place either.
Right.
Okay, all right, so that was interesting. It's a little different than I thought it would be, really. I mean, I know Charlie Baker walked away from everything, but this is, wow, okay. So the agenda item is pool testing for athletes. I think at a minimum right now, we should cover that topic. And yeah,
But I can say that we are still carrying on some of the same stuff that we were doing with sanitization.
sure, sure.
Inside volleyball, if you look out there, the girls are all seated, separated from each other.
So similar to a classroom environment,
You
trying
can
to,
also say that, I can only say for football, because that's where I'm at, that, you know, it's, the kids are aware when we break down and things like that, that we are separated in drills and never more than 10 minutes together in the same drill.
okay,
So we are aware of those things. I think all our kids are aware of those things, not just football, I'm saying field hockey
yeah,
and soccer and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think they're all aware. I think everybody understands what's going on, and I think they know that's coming.
and I'll save till after we make the motion, I'll save the rest of my questions. So, and I also want to introduce that the next item on the agenda, item 8, is Superintendent Discretion regarding COVID protocols. So let's just briefly introduce that, so maybe we can do something, a motion that works together. So we were really in Greenfield, we were kind of saved by, in the spring when our students returned to in-person learning in April. We did not put an end date on our policies for COVID protocols, specifically mask wearing, social distancing in the school buildings. We didn't have to come back together to reintroduce a motion to approve that for a new school year. A stroke of Dr. Cool genius, which none of us would be surprised by. But a lot of what we saw, if you watch the news at all, leading up to the opening of school across the nation, was debate happening because school committees had to come together to put a new policy in place. You may also remember that back in September, October of 2020, when we were just starting to talk about in-person learning, students coming together for any sort of in-person instruction at all, whatever that might look like, giving the superintendent the power to make operational decisions without including the school committee and reporting on those as they happen, which gives the superintendent the leeway to make quick decisions about health and safety of students as the climate changes in the community or as DESE policy changes. And at that time, that proposal was not taken up by the leadership of the district, and we didn't do that. I'd like to try and have us do that again so that Superintendent DeBarge can have the ability, as things may change from day to day, to work with her team to not feel like we have to have an emergency school committee meeting to be able to manage health and safety protocols in schools as they unfold. Dr. Holmes, yeah.
My recollection is we started meeting to change, we're going to do this, then we're going to do that, and that we did take a vote the last time we talked about mask policy that said, I'd have to go check, but I think we voted that we gave the discretion to the superintendent to make adjustments without, that was our policy. I seem to recall that we actually voted that.
The same one that we didn't have a time frame on, is that what
I
you're
don't
saying?
know which
I
one,
think
but
that in there
I
we
think
put some.
at the end of our discussion, we said, this is crazy to keep having to come back. And we voted that we would give discretion to the superintendent to make changes against the updates and whatever, and didn't have to
It
come
was
back
like
to
as
the
DESE
committee.
updated.
But I think we
So
did
that
vote.
was what, maybe
I think we did
April
vote
or
that.
May?
I don't remember. It's the last time we talked about masking policy, and I think
You mean the summer?
I just don't remember it. But I remember the last time we talked about it, we said we're not going to keep coming back together, and I recall we had a vote.
Okay. So we're gonna have to figure this out before we have a
Do you
motion.
And
Yes.
and then, as time progressed, we changed our mind and said, no, you do now need to come to us.
Really?
Based on, some
This
changes
was
that were
post
being
that.
made.
That was
This was
post
post-
that
You were talking about
situation.
2
I know what you're
years ago.
talking about.
Yes.
Yes, we're
I'm
talking
talking
about
about-
way past that. In the
Yeah.
spring,
You and I remember the same thing.
Yes.
where,
Yes.
Yes, it was declined by the superintendent to take that on.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, Member Collins, is that you're recalling when we talked about this with Dr. Poole, we made some adjustment to that. So we need to look back on our.
I just remember that we voted that it would be the superintendent's discretion to make adjustments to our.
Now that you're saying that, I kind of remember that too.
with Judy.
and it was with Judy, and it was
I'm not so
like
sure it was Judy's idea. I think it came from the school committee.
She liked it though.
Yeah.
She mentioned it to
We
you,
didn't want to
right?
do it.
Or mentioned it to me. One, yeah.
Okay.
She liked it though. She was okay
We
with
wanted
it.
less.
It was so much
We wanted less.
easier.
We wanted her to have more.
it
Yeah.
was basically we put it in there that as the constant updating guidelines are happening, the superintendent has our discretion
Permission
to act.
to change.
As long
Do it
as
again,
you're
just
put
to
here,
be sure.
Glenn may
Yeah.
have
Oh,
a.
Did?
Thank you.
That's
Right.
a
Secretary Johnson Musad, please enlighten us.
Policy EBC-S, policy on COVID-related issue. The school committee will authorize the superintendent to act expeditiously in executing the back-to-school plan in accordance with current law and regulation, and will, where noted, authorize the superintendent to suspend, revise, or recommend policies, rules, and protocols as needed to serve the best interests and safety of students, their families, and the community. So this is part of a policy that we adopted.
What's the date on it?
This
I don't,
Does that cover what we needed to?
yeah, I think that covers it. Yeah.
I just remember that we voted it, and the
May-
reason was not to keep coming back because we're going to do this instead of that, and let the superintendent
Yeah, because it's really,
make
it's
reasonable adjustments that she thinks are
tied in
needed.
hands of a lot of districts.
As long, and we all felt like as long as we're getting constant updates, if we felt like at that
That's
moment,
right.
yeah, that was not what we would want, we could then call an emergency meeting. But in the meantime, people were safe.
Yes, so we have what you
So.
want.
Yeah, so it sounds like we've already done that.
Yeah.
So let's do the pool testing. Oh, let's do the homework.
What were those policy letters, please, Glenn?
EBC-S.
if I can find it.
EBCH dash.
Ooh,
E and,
that's impressive.
what's the second letter?
It's definitely EB.
E is in boy.
B,
Yeah.
B as in boy, C as in
Charlie.
Charlie dash S as in Sam,
There you go.
policy on COVID-related issues. And I can't quite, in this device, figure out exactly where when we did
But
that.
that sounds like that we have her already for, thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
both.
High five team, well
Thank you
done.
all for remembering where I did not. So let's get back to the pool testing for athletes. So I think we can do at this time, a motion that the Greenfield School Committee mandate all interscholastic athletics participants be required to participate in the COVID-19 pool testing program. Does that work for your needs? Well, we can't because it's not on the agenda. Process is sometimes a pain.
Are you
Mike,
sure that
so-
that's true?
Yes, your eye roll is appropriate.
I
I
think,
didn't roll them yet.
I
I
think
just,
it's,
I don't necessarily want the athletes to feel like they're being singled out.
Right.
I don't.
But I wrote it.
But we could have, the superintendent can then put in place something for, extracurricular activities that mirrors this for athletes.
Because she has the discretion to do it.
Correct.
And before and after school too, can she do that?
That, doesn't the before school get into like really young children where the issues might be different?
I don't know, it sounds like we need to talk through that first.
Okay.
So let's do the athletes, and they're not being singled out. We just didn't plan biggest picture.
I
Yeah.
also would say, just in terms of the wording of it, we might want to take pool out and just say COVID-19 testing, because when parents
Smart.
consent, they are
Very
consenting to all
Very smart.
three kinds of testing, and we don't
Yes.
have a way to separate
Delineate
and say
which is
this
which.
person is only consenting to one type of testing.
Okay, so I appreciate that, and let's try a motion that the Greenfield School Committee mandate interscholastic athletics participants be required to participate in COVID-19 testing.
So moved.
From Vice Chair Ekstrom, and a second
second,
from Secretary Johnson Musad, and Susan Farber, you're good? Okay, Member Hollins, go
I have a
ahead.
question. Are there any allowable exceptions? I'm just curious. Because the first time the motion was read, it said all, but I'm just wondering, are there allowable exceptions for some? I can't think why, but I'm just curious.
If there is a medical reason, but I have not encountered any kind of medical reason why someone would be able to consent to testing.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Secretary Johnson Musad.
I just kind of, there was a lot of back and forth and it was all happening very quickly. So I want to take a second just to communicate to the public, like, the concern is that because of open meeting law, we don't want to deliberate about things that the public wasn't notified about in advance. And our agenda has this listed as about athletics. So we're voting on the measure about athletics with the knowledge that, as it says in our other policy, the superintendent is capable of expanding that policy without waiting for a school committee vote. And we can come back together again at another meeting and affirm it as a school committee, but we kind of anticipate that this isn't going to be just about athletics.
Yes, well said. You got that, Mary? Now,
I just
the
feel like that that's
before and
actually
after
not
school,
true.
you wanna talk
I think we can add a word to that and it will be fine.
Well, especially since,
And I think about that, my
Yeah.
concern being that, before and after school may be less, it may be more,
Is it redundant? Are they getting
no,
tested?
I'm wondering if some families really rely on before and after school care for children to be able to get.
If they didn't have it, they couldn't come to school.
I'm wondering if there
Yeah.
is some connection that is less extracurricular around before and
Yeah.
after school. And
Totally.
I'd like to investigate that.
I think
a
it's
little bit
different.
more.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
So,
Yeah, sure.
but if in fact, the result of that is not what I wonder, then certainly I can act and move forward, including before and after school, but I just have some questions on that.
Other discussion around the motion?
I just have a quick question
Yeah.
about how it's going to work since we don't currently have the pool testing. Will you be doing PCRs or the
The rapid test.
Rapid tests? Is that how you imagine it going forward? I'm just curious.
I'm imagining going forward that as soon as we do have the pool testing, which I'm hoping is going to be very quickly.
Fingers crossed.
As soon as we do, it would be a requirement for the athletes that they would participate in the pool testing that is happening district-wide in their school. So it wouldn't be a separate thing that they would have to do, it would be part of the pool testing.
So basically, they just have to make sure they're signed up.
Exactly, they have to make sure they're signed up, and I have to sort of confirm with the coaches that they are participating, and if they are refusing to participate, I have to communicate that to the coach and say they are not going to be able to participate in their sport because they're refusing to participate in the testing.
How are you going to notify each student who belongs to a club to their family, or are you just going to assume that they're going to do the signing up themselves? Like, how is this notification process going to go forward? Because I know a lot of people who are like, I don't even know how I would sign up for that. I'm not saying we haven't sent out plenty of communication. I'm just saying there are people who don't know how.
I will include this update in the parent update on Thursday. We will include it on the website. We can include it on the athletic page of the website. And then if the coaches are concerned that we will have challenges notifying at first the athletes and then anyone else, we can do paper notification for the people involved in these activities.
And my final question about this is that I have this like fear that the students are going to be willing to be tested and participate and their families will not sign them up. And that sort of breaks my heart. Because, so is there any way for a 17-year-old child to consent for themselves? Like, what are those lines and how can we encourage families to be willing to consent to the testing?
I will say that I know to this point, Kelly and the nurses have reached out individually to families if they need, and certainly I would say we could do individual outreach. I think it's reasonable for some families to still have questions about what's involved and what it would look like at school. You know, no one wants to contemplate their child could be traumatized by having a COVID test at school. So the ability for our nursing staff to explain to parents that it's what it physically is like for it to occur and all of that, I think could be behind some potential hesitation. So we can definitely do individual outreach if we need to.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And to answer your question, because it is a medical procedure, kids who are 18
Can consent for themselves.
Consent to themselves.
I figured, but
anyone who's under 18 does need parental consent.
I just hope that we don't run into that problem. I'm just gonna keep my fingers crossed. That.
I think we have a few avenues we can use to try to at least provide answers for
Yeah.
families, and then, you know, at the end of the day,
It's
it's a choice
right.
that some individuals may have to make from this, but we have some options.
Good, thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, so we're voting on the pool testing for athletes. Let's do any abstentions, any no votes. So that appears to pass unanimously. Thank you all over here on this side of the table for your work on that and for making sure we can participate, our students can participate. And thank you all for the good questions and discussion. Appreciate that. And then we are on to number 9, district level strategic planning. You want to start? You want me to start?
Just that Justin can
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, let me tell you and then you say.
I'm sorry, we kind of went over 8 already, you're saying, as part of
Oh,
this.
yeah, so you found us the policy, this is,
all right,
we already
great.
did it, yep.
Okay, great.
After our previous meeting and discussions that Amy and I have been having, I reached out to Justin Martin. He's, as you probably remember, he's the man that worked with you folks on the communications plan. I have worked with him in my previous district to do strategic planning, district level strategic planning, and the process utilized at that time worked very, very well. And if the committee is interested, then he can come to the October meeting to do an overview for all of you on what his proposed process would be, so that he can get, I guess, I think of the strategic plan from my level of work as the anchor that we would use for prioritizing, which certainly from the superintendent's perspective is very helpful for moving work forward. So that's, but if he's interested, he can come to the October meeting.
Does that work for folks? Member Holland?
I guess I'm curious, do we know what that would cost, and are there other places that do strategic planning so that it's possible to see, you know, this group does it this way and this group does it that way, or?
We're already on, we already have Justin for $1,500 a month, I think is the cost of having him.
Or could we see a plan that he's done, just have some sense of how he does it?
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you've worked with him on a strategic plan before.
It
So we
didn't
vouch for.
finish,
Oh.
but we were very close. The last piece was happening when I
Yeah.
gave my resignation, so. But I went through 95% of the process with him.
So we'll ask him to bring some examples, and we can continue to talk about how we want to move forward with it. We're not set in stone at this point, but, you know, it's kind of like the first time you do something, if you got access to a resource that's already there, you would use it, and then maybe be more picky the next time. I don't know, that's how I would look at it, but let's see, let's start the process and see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, the other concern I have is that with our contract with TMS, they offer such a broad range of services that it kind of creates an opportunity for us as a school committee to say, we're not going to do a bid, we're not going to do a search, they're here and it's convenient, let's continue to work with them. But there are also equity issues involved in that in terms of, are we going to, you know, have contracts that are, you know, people could put in a bid who are, we're not already working with and who aren't already from the same firm, you know, so it's in terms of trying to get a diversity of vendors that we work with and get a variety of perspectives on the school system. I mean, I think that it may be worth kind of doing some more exploration sometimes than just what's the most convenient. Although, I mean, to be honest, especially during COVID when we were in that emergency mentality, you know, they've been great.
Do we have to?
Yeah,
to go out
exactly.
looking
But
for
maybe
it?
we start having a little bit more bandwidth now to follow a procurement process that's more inclusive.
Heard. So, but we're okay with starting with having him do a presentation in October. I didn't hear anyone say, no, we don't want to at least do that. Okay.
Could I make another comment? I'd say over the last 18 months, we've actually established some goals for ourselves. And if we could go back and see what they were, like we really wanted to do something with social justice, and there's like a half a dozen things we said we wanted to do. It would be great if we could make having a strategic plan maybe a goal and not give up all the goals we've already said we want to have, and maybe see what those goals are. Because the strategic plan takes time, and we could still come into this year with some goals that we've already decided are important. I don't remember them all, I just remember we thought social justice, looking at what we do in the district was really an important goal. I remember that one. But there've been a half a dozen that we voted to do.
One of the nice things about the process that I did with Justin is that a number of the first meetings were between himself, me, and the school board of ed there, and it wasn't beginning fresh. You know, the committee highlighted what was already identified as priorities for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that it would mean giving up everything that you've already identified. It would really be highlighting
Knitting it
and then
together.
operationalizing.
Well, and what I was hoping you would say is when Christine and I first talked about her interview with us as a school committee, the first thing you said was that the questions we asked of the superintendent candidates were a blueprint for our priorities and our goals. And it's a starting point for that strategic plan. And I hadn't
Very-
thought of it that way until it was pointed out, but I was like, oh, it's really,
Yeah.
the questions really were very,
Reflective of how we've.
Thanks.
Things on our
What
mind.
we've been trying to accomplish.
We could make the strategic plan one of our goals for this year. That's
well, I
another way
think
to
it
put it.
is. I mean, there's work to be done. And it's, to me, I don't see a strategic plan as one goal. I see a strategic plan as like a closet for organizing your goals in. It's got shelves for these things, it's got a wire rack for these things, it's got, you know, for the foundational things, it's got something on the floor. It's not the best analogy, but like it's,
Reflective. I think the biggest piece in terms of management is that, one, I know we talked about the need for my evaluation, and certainly I can make assumptions about what your priorities are for my work based on those interview questions. I think I'm at least on the target, if not in the bullseye. But it does help in terms of planning the use of resources and time, you know, even in terms of something as detail-oriented that would be at our level that Karen and I have talked about is what grants do we apply for? We can't apply for everything. And so if grants come in that are in line with the goals in the strategic plan and the operationalized steps that we've outlined to get there, then it makes sense. Yes, this is in line with the priorities for the district. If it's not in that closet, then we don't apply for it. So it really is a wonderful way for you folks to give me sort of the map.
it's a
of where
tool
want
for
us to
you
get.
to understand how to prioritize.
Very much so.
All right. Secretary Johnson, go ahead.
Well, just speaking to Dr. Hollins's concern, I think that any good strategic planning process would probably involve a review of the last year's school committee minutes or the last 2 years, you know, and kind of being able to pull apart the discussions we had and the things we talked about. So I just kind of assume that would be part of the process of
It wasn't,
writing the strategic
but,
plan, but
You
yeah,
know, that doesn't mean it couldn't be here.
yeah,
It wasn't in my prior district. But
right,
like I said, Greenfield is not done. So
right.
Further questions, comments, discussion on this item? Okay, so we'll look for Justin on the October meeting, and then we've already talked about unified art schedules under your report. Is there anything else on that you wanted to add, or anything else, school committee? It seems like we resolved it. Cool, look at that. So that is the agenda except for the executive session. We will be doing an executive session under MJLC 30A subsection 21. Exemption number 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation in open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, and of course I do declare. And we will return to open session once we've met, and I anticipate that it will take us about 20 minutes to return.
I think we need to vote.
So we need to vote to open motion to open the executive session, please.
So moved?
Secretary Johnson Musada, and a second
Second.
from Member Wall. And we do have to do a roll call for this, is that right?
So, yeah.
Yep, there's Dr. Boulware, did you hear her? So go ahead, please, Secretary Johnson Musada.
Member Karen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom,
Yes.
Member Hollins.
Yes.
Secretary Johnson Musad, I'm a yes. Chair Proietti,
Yes.
Member Wall,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, so we'll move into executive session at 7:20.
We are recording.
We are back from our executive session and back into our public session. I would like a motion at this time to approve the settlement agreement by and between the Greenfield School Committee and the UPSEU Local 424 Custodial Maintenance Personnel Union Can I have a motion?
So moved.
I should have said as presented. Accept the settlement agreement as presented, sorry. Moved by member Karen.
Second?
Second from Secretary Johnson Musad. Susan Farber, did you get that motion? The motion to approve the settlement agreement by and between the Greenfield School Committee and the UPS EU Local 424, the Custodial Maintenance Personnel Union. We are approving it as presented.
For those of you playing at home, settlement agreement means contract.
Contract with the union.
There was something that we had to settle.
Thank you.
Good point.
We have a motion from Member Karen and a second from Secretary Johnson Musad. And let's do a roll call vote on this one.
Yep. Member Karen?
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom?
Yes.
Member Hollins?
Yes.
Secretary Johnson Musad, I'm a yes. Chair Poyetty?
Yes.
Member Wall?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Wonderful. Thank you all on that. That's a nice step forward for some of our staff who have worked very hard over the COVID and forever to make our spaces look beautiful. And I also wanted to acknowledge there was a question about how much this contract is actually costing us. And I did not bring the figure with me, and I want to make sure I have that exact. So at our October meeting, I will make sure I have the correct figure, and we can talk about that during the school business manager report in October. And at this point, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
That was unanimous.
Second.
We are adjourned at whatever time it is.